Hi everyone, I'm Josh with Northern Frogger, and in this video I want to introduce a new animal to the channel as well as give him a nice enclosure upgrade. Now I've actually had this guy for about 6 months or so now, and if you follow me on Instagram you might have seen him there before, but I've never really shown him on the channel here before other than a couple brief clips in my last frog room tour video. But he really should have a proper introduction, so this is my smooth-sided toad, Sir Anthony Hopkins. This video isn't intended to be a full care guide or species spotlight video or anything like that. I'm mainly just going to be showing building up his new enclosure today. But I will be talking a bit about my experience caring for this guy so far, as well as going over a little bit of his care and life history. So this is the enclosure that he's in right now. It's a 36 by 18 base and 12 inches high. It's one of those sliding screen top terrariums, except the sliding top has been replaced with this kind of sit on top screen. I think it had a leopard gecko in it previously, but this enclosure was actually given to me like this, so I don't have the original sliding screen. And it works okay like this, but it's not really as secure as I would like, and especially being up on this tall shelf here, it's kind of a pain to get in there to clean and do maintenance on this tank. And it's also not really tall enough for him. He ends up kind of climbing on this cork bark and jumping into the screen more than I would like. So that's kind of the main reason I wanted to get him into something bigger. And I didn't really think the short height would be much of a problem for a toad, but it turns out this guy actually seems to like to climb quite a bit. So this is the new terrarium that he's going to be going into. It's got the same footprint, it's a 36 by 18, except this one is twice as high, so it's 24 inches tall. And my hope with this one is that I can give him some more kind of levels and climbing area, hopefully prevent him from smashing into the screen quite as much. Plus this new one just being front opening is going to be a lot easier to deal with in terms of maintenance. So I did get this terrarium used from Kijiji, and it was a really good price and came with a whole bunch of other accessories and stuff. So it was a really good deal, but that's mainly because the person was using a heat lamp on here. I think this was for a ball python, he said previously. And the heat lamp has kind of melted the screen top here a bit and the background. But I'm not really too worried about that. I think I'm just going to try and hide this melted background area. And then I actually have another screen top that's in perfect condition from another big terrarium that I won't be using. So I'm just going to swap that new one into here. And then the other thing we're going to be doing today is actually rearranging a few things. So Hopkins is going to be going onto this stand with my other big vivarium onto the top here. And the short exoteras are going to be swapped into the top of this stand where he is now. And then this whole stand unit, we're actually going to move out into the main living room to make some more room over here. And this area is eventually going to be a stand with 6 of the 18-inch cube exoteras. So we do have a lot to do today, so let's get started building up his new enclosure. So the first thing we did was rearrange the tanks. We figured it was easier to build in place rather than to try to move it in after the fact. So these big stands I kind of built with runners on the bottom, so they're fairly easy to move. So once we got it in place, it was just a matter of plugging in the heat pad and the lights on a timer, turning those on, and it's pretty much ready to go. This is kind of what the frog room bonus corner is looking like now. So I started by giving the tank a thorough cleaning because I did pick it up used, and I was kind of preparing the substrate at the same time. And for that I'm just using this coconut fiber that comes in these compressed bricks. So just add it to a container, add some water, and basically just let it soak it up and expand. Then you can mix it up a bit with your hands afterwards if you need to. And I got the tank cleaned out while that was happening, and then it was time to add the substrate. And at this point I realized I forgot to put the background back in first, so I had to do that, but that was a pretty easy fix. And I did end up putting it back in upside down so that I could hide that kind of ugly melted patch behind the substrate. And then it was just a matter of putting in all the decor. I spent a little bit of time just trying different arrangements until I found something that I thought looked good and still gave him lots of hiding spots on the warm and the cool side, and giving him some climbing room while trying to keep the pieces in a fairly secure position so he couldn't just topple them over. And I did end up changing things a bit more later, but at this point I figured it was good enough to release him into his new home. Alright, it's a few days later, and this is the mostly finished tank. Even though it's the same footprint as the old one, having double the vertical height there really makes a big difference in being able to arrange and play with the cork bark there. And it's definitely accomplished the goal of preventing him from smashing into the top. Definitely not doing that anymore. And he does seem to be appreciating the extra room and hiding spaces. He's not like hunting the glass nearly as much as he was before. He seems much more comfortable in there now. I have added a couple of plants in there just to help the aesthetics a little bit, and I think I am going to be adding more eventually. It's just that with this guy being so big, it's hard to find plants that he's not just going to trample instantly. So I wanted to see how these couple did before I added too many. So the plants in there are just kind of in their own pots. They're not planted in the vivarium. I didn't actually make this a bioactive vivarium. Just because I'm not sure if this is how I want to finalize it. I do kind of want to be able to play around with the arrangement a little bit more and see how I like it. And I'm not 100% sure this is going to be his permanent home, so I wanted to be able to still leave the door open to be able to easily change something if I do eventually want to make this into a dart frog tank or something else. So he does seem to be really liking it in there. He spent the first couple days kind of crawling around all over the cork bark exploring, but then he kind of found a couple spots that he likes, and he pretty much just hangs out and hides there during the day most of the time. But he does enjoy soaking in his little dish there. As you can see, he's actually in here right now, just hanging out in the water. So I did mention at the beginning of this video that I would talk a little bit about the care of these guys. So I do want to briefly go over it. It is going to be brief because I do want to do a full species spotlight video on this guy eventually. But if you want more information, I suggest going to the Josh's Frogs website about these guys, which is honestly where I got most of my information about him too. There really isn't that much information out there about keeping these guys as pets yet. So I will be doing more videos and updates about this guy just to help get some more knowledge out there and share my experiences keeping them. But when I was buying this guy, the seller kind of described him as in some ways like a lot like a giant dart frog, which is kind of true. They aren't actually very closely related, as this is a true toad from the Bufonidae family. But they do actually share a pretty similar range and habitat as dart frogs. They do come from the Amazon in northern South America, and they kind of inhabit the forest floor, living in the leaf litter where they hunt insects and other small animals. So I haven't been able to officially confirm this, but I think it's reasonable to assume that these guys might actually encounter dart frogs in their native ranges in the wild. Although that being said, I definitely don't recommend attempting to cohab these guys with any dart frogs, just because this toad is so big, he would probably be able to eat pretty much any dart frog. But they also have similar temperature requirements to dart frog, liking it kind of around room temperature. I think they do like it a little bit warmer than room temperature. So I do have a heat pad underneath this tank. It's hooked up to a rheostat. So there's kind of a hot area on this side that sits in the kind of low to mid 80s. He doesn't spend much time over there, but you will see him kind of sit on the warm side every once in a while. But the rheostat is also hooked up to the light timer, so it turns off at night and gives him a little bit of temperature drop at night. So because he is a toad, he doesn't need as high of humidity as dart frogs do, but being kind of adapted to a rainforest, they're definitely not quite as dry adapted as some other toads. So you don't want to get the humidity to drop too low, but they also don't like it too high, and they do need more ventilation than dart frogs. I like to try and keep this guy about the 50 to 60% range. I find getting it too much wetter or more humid than that, he starts kind of moving around and hunting the glass quite a bit, like he's trying to escape his enclosure. So yeah, I think 50 to 60% humidity is about ideal, and then I always keep a dish of fresh water available for him to soak in if he wants to too. And these guys are nocturnal, so he's going to be more active at night, although you will see him out and about a little bit throughout the day too. But most of their days are going to kind of be spent hiding, so you do want to make sure you have a lot of hiding spots in the enclosure. And as far as handling goes, I don't really recommend handling any amphibian any more than absolutely necessary. But because toads have less permeable skin than some amphibians, and because this guy is fairly large, he's probably one of the better amphibians to handle if you're really set on having a handleable amphibian. And I think he will tolerate a little bit of light handling without too much issue. But you should keep handling sessions fairly short and infrequent, just because it can be stressful for him. And just remember that being a toad, they can secrete bufotoxin. So you're always going to want to remember to wash your hands when handling. Both before you're handling him to avoid transferring anything to the toad, and to wash any of those toxins that might have gotten your hands off before you go and touch anything else. And you should also avoid handling them if you have any cuts or open wounds on your hands. And remember to avoid touching your mouth or nose or eyes while handling, because mucous membranes can provide potential entry points for the toxin as well. And it's never a bad idea when handling any amphibians to wear powder-free nitrile or latex gloves, just for added safety for both you and the amphibian. But yeah, that's my smooth-sided toad. I hope you guys enjoyed meeting him. And definitely let me know if you want to see more of them on the channel. And if you have any specific questions about them, leave them down below in the comment section there. But that's going to do it for this video, so thanks a lot for watching, everyone. And if you made it this far, please consider liking this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos about my dart frogs, geckos, snakes, and vivariums. And as always, let me know down below if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos. And until next time, happy frogging.